By the early 1940s, the world was already consumed by war. Europe, Asia, and Africa were engulfed in a conflict that had grown far beyond regional disputes. Nazi Germany dominated much of Europe, Fascist Italy sought empire, and Imperial Japan expanded aggressively across Asia and the Pacific. Though the United States watched with growing concern, it remained officially neutral until a single day changed everything. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese Imperial Navy launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. In less than 2 hours, more than 2,400 Americans were killed, and much of the Pacific Fleet lay damaged or destroyed. The attack shocked the nation. The next day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed Congress, calling it a date which will live in infamy. The United States declared war on Japan. Within days, Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy declared war on the United States. America was now fully engaged in World War II. Though the U.S. entry came late compared to other major powers, its involvement would prove decisive. The nation began a massive transformation economically, militarily, and socially. Factories converted to wartime production almost overnight. Automobiles became tanks, refrigerators became aircraft parts, and shipyards launched vessels at unprecedented speed. The United States became known as the arsenal of democracy. Millions of Americans were drafted or volunteered for military service. Soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines trained for a global conflict unlike any before. Women entered the workforce in huge numbers, symbolized by Rosie the Riveter, while African Americans pushed for civil rights under the banner of the Double V, campaigned victory against fascism abroad and racism at home. The war would be fought on two vast fronts: the European theater against Nazi Germany and the Pacific theater against Imperial Japan. In Europe, Germany under Adolf Hitler had already conquered Poland, France, the Low Countries, and much of Eastern Europe. The Nazi regime ruled through terror, genocide, and total war. The Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others, was unfolding in concentration and extermination camps across occupied territories. The United States first focused on supporting its allies Britain and the Soviet Union through the Lend-Lease program, supplying weapons, vehicles, food, and fuel. After formally entering the war, American troops began arriving in Europe in large numbers. The turning point in the European war came gradually. In North Africa, American forces fought alongside British troops against German General Erwin Rommel. Early setbacks taught hard lessons, but U.S. forces grew more experienced and effective. On June 6, 1944, the Allies launched Operation Overlord, the D-Day invasion of Normandy. More than 156,000 Allied troops stormed heavily, defended beaches in the largest amphibious invasion in history. American soldiers landed at Omaha and Utah beaches, facing brutal resistance. The cost was enormous, but the invasion succeeded. Following D-Day, Allied forces pushed inland through France. Paris was liberated in August 1944 as Allied armies advanced from the west and Soviet forces pressed from the east. Germany found itself trapped. Hitler launched a final major counteroffensive in December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge. German forces attempted to split Allied lines in the Ardennes forest. After weeks of fierce fighting in freezing conditions, the offensive failed. Germany's remaining strength was broken. By April 1945, Allied forces entered Germany itself. American and Soviet troops met at the Elbe River. Berlin fell to Soviet forces, and on April 30, 1945, Adolf Hitler committed suicide. Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 7, 1945. Victory in Europe was declared. While the war in Europe ended, the conflict in the Pacific continued with relentless intensity. Japan's expansion had been rapid and brutal. Following Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces seized the Philippines, Singapore, Indonesia, and vast areas of Southeast Asia. American and Allied troops suffered devastating defeats. In the early months of the Pacific War, the tide began to turn in 1942. At the Battle of Midway, U.S. naval forces dealt Japan a crushing blow, sinking 4 aircraft carriers. It was a decisive victory that shifted the balance of power in the Pacific. The United States adopted a strategy known as island hopping, capturing key islands, while bypassing heavily fortified Japanese positions. Each battle was brutal. At Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, American forces faced fanatical resistance. Japanese soldiers often fought to the death, and civilians were caught in the violence. The human cost was staggering. Casualties mounted on both sides. Kamikaze attacks, suicide missions flown by Japanese pilots added a new level of desperation and horror to the conflict. By mid-1945, American forces were closing in on the Japanese home islands. Military planners feared that a full invasion of Japan would cost hundreds of thousands of American lives and millions of Japanese lives. President Harry Truman, who had taken office after Roosevelt's death in April 1945, faced an agonizing decision. The United States had developed a new and terrifying weapon, the atomic bomb. On August 6, 1945, an atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. 3 days later, a second bomb struck Nagasaki. The destruction was unprecedented. Entire cities were devastated in seconds, and tens of thousands died instantly. Many more would suffer long-term effects from radiation. On August 15, 1945, Japan announced its surrender. World War II was over. The war had lasted 6 years and claimed more than 70 million lives worldwide. It reshaped the global order. The United States emerged as one of 2 superpowers. Alongside the Soviet Union, Europe lay in ruins. Colonial empires weakened, and the foundations of the Cold War were laid. At home, the war transformed American society. The GI Bill expanded education and homeownership. Women and minorities gained new opportunities, though inequalities persisted. The United States assumed new global responsibilities, helping to establish the United Nations and leading efforts to rebuild Europe through the Marshall Plan. World War II was more than a military conflict. It was a struggle over ideology, freedom, and the future of humanity. The United States entered the war reluctantly, but left it forever changed. From the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of the Pacific, from the factories at home to the ashes of Hiroshima, America's role in World War II defined the modern world. The war ended, but its legacy continues to shape global politics, international relations, and collective memory to this day.